What is the most unexplainable thing that has ever happened to you? For about a week before my apartment burned down, I dreamed every night about various houses burning down. You know, maybe it's just coincidence, but I've heard so many weird stories about people's dreams kind of like predicting the future. Maybe our subconscious is more powerful than we think. Not totally unexplainable, and can just call it coincidence if you don't believe in sorcery. When I was in kindergarten, or maybe first grade, we had a blackout at my school, and this kid goes, "Wait, I'll light a match," and proceeds to pretend to light an invisible match, and the lights came back on. And we cheered for him. Then he said, "Oh, it's too hot," and he blew it out. Then the lights went back out. Wizardry. Yeah, I think we could pretty much replace any instance of sorcery with just coincidence. Especially all those things that happen in Harry Potter. I mean, they just have bizarre luck over there. I was outside talking to my neighbor. Suddenly it was like someone accidentally flicked the lights off and then back on. It was dark in the middle of the day as far as I could see for just a split second. I thought it was just my brain, but then I saw my neighbor look confused as well. Then her daughter said, "What just happened?" We were all looking in opposite directions, so it was just suddenly dark everywhere. We still talk about it sometimes. No idea what it was. I've spent hours on the internet trying to find answers with no success. Ooh, sounds like we got another government cover-up here. I guess it was a coincidence, but when I was little I used to go outside in the mornings to pet a cat that lived under my home. I used to play with her every day. One night I had a dream that she died, so I woke up distraught. When I went out to our usual place, and I called out for her, she never came out, and I never saw her again since the dream. Again with those magical dreams. One night, when I was about 16 years old, I swear I glitched into the Matrix or something. I'd finally decided to get off my computer and go to bed. Around 2 a.m. if my memory serves me correctly. At that time, my family and I lived in a decently sized 2-story house. The staircase to the second floor was pretty basic. Heading up a few steps, then turning a landing halfway up, traverse up the remaining few steps, and at the top you're only a couple of footfalls from the bedroom door. Someone please explain to me, then, how I got lost on this freaking staircase. Sure, it was dark, but even then you'd have to be a special kind of stupid to not know how to walk up these stairs after you've already done it thousands of times before. Just keep one hand on the railing and you don't need to use your eyes. I swear that as soon as I reached the landing, I spent 10 minutes just continually walking upwards. Realistically, it only takes someone 5 to 7 seconds to walk up these stairs, 3 if they're running or skipping steps. I realized I'd been walking for much longer than that. Stopped, and immediately felt uneasy. I'd walked up those stairs in pitch black darkness so many times before, but even with my hand on the railing, I was getting nowhere, just endlessly walking upwards. My friggin' skin crawled. If my brother hadn't turned on the upstairs hallway light, I'm not sure I would have made it to my bedroom. The guy blinked sleepily at me and asked me if I was okay, and all I could say was, I legitimately have no idea. I told him the next day what had happened, and he told me that the reason he'd come out of his room in the first place was because he'd heard footsteps on the stairs for several minutes. I mean, what the heck, man, what was that? I wasn't so tired that I mindlessly walked up and down the stairs for a while. I was completely awake, and not once did it suddenly feel like I'd turned around to walk back downstairs at any time. I still get chills thinking about it. You know, I like stuff that just kind of seems unreal, like it's just some sort of weird mystery where there's just no explanation. I mean, really the best explanation I could come up with to this is just like sometimes your mental state is kind of just out there, where you're kind of in reality but kind of out of it. Not necessarily that you're like schizophrenic or something, but sometimes your brain just kind of stops working correctly for a bit. It's kind of like dreaming. But I mean, even if that is the case, that's still pretty weird. I was walking my friend's house one summer, maybe 10 or 11 years old. Anyways, sunny day, couple of clouds, but otherwise it's bright out. Perfect visibility, when a perfectly rectangular shadow comes up from the direction behind me on the ground. Maybe 15 by 30 feet in size. Traveling just faster than a car probably would be, and goes over the top of me. I'm looking at the shape on the ground as it goes over, and when I do, I look up to the sky and I don't see anything that could have possibly cast it. Even the clouds were just trailing little wisps. I looked back down, and it was going over some houses, and then it was gone forever. So yeah, weirdest thing was a mystery rectangle shadow. You know, part of me kinda can't wait for one day when we just have like everything caught on camera, then we could just witness this kind of stuff all the time. Then maybe we could try and figure it out from there. I started having a panic attack one night out of nowhere. I kept repeating, "Something's wrong." I do have anxiety, but had only had one other panic attack before this day. My husband sat on the bed with me, and we tried to figure out what was triggering this. The only thing we could think of is that a family member of mine was going on a trip the next day, and maybe that was making me nervous. So I made up a weird excuse to drop off coffee before they left super early the next morning. When I saw them, I felt fine. I immediately knew it wasn't connected, wished them well, and drove home. About an hour later, I get a call that a person in my family on the other side of the country died by suicide the night before. Yeah, this is pretty weird. I have heard a lot of stories where people kind of just felt like something was wrong when something happened to someone they were close with. And we don't really have enough on like the laws of nature to explain why that would happen, but I think it's really good to just like keep your mind open to just weird stuff that we can't explain. I mean, just because something seems supernatural or paranormal today, maybe that just means we'll learn about it in the future. Years ago, my buddy and a friend of his are out in the boonies, lighting off fireworks for the 4th of July. We go out to the cars to light the stick for igniting the fireworks. As my buddy's buddy is in the car doing so, I look up at the stars, completely unused to seeing so many. As I'm looking, something just feels off. I finally pinpoint it and start squinting my eyes, looking away and back, everything I can think of to make sure that I'm seeing what I think I'm seeing. It's one point of light that's absolutely identical to the stars around it, except for one weirdness. It's doing a steady, repeating figure 8. I turn to my buddy to ask him about it, and I see him staring at the same area of the sky. So I ask him, "Do you see what I see?" I hadn't said a word about what I saw, but he answered back, "A star doing a figure 8? I've tried to explain it by any logical means over the years, but nothing quite matches up, and I refuse to accept that a figure 8 in space is the alien teenager version of doing donuts in the parking lot. Yeah, it just kind of makes you think that no matter how much we think we know about the universe, we don't really know anything about it. When I was about 10 years old, I woke up and had no recollection of the day before. I told my little brother, and he said he had the same problem. I, however, didn't believe him because he was 8 and thought it was funny, where I was mildly concerned. I think he thought it was a game and we were playing some pretend game. This of course made my folks think it was a game and no one took me seriously. All I wanted was for someone to tell me something about yesterday to jog my memory, but no one did. I still have no idea what happened. This was over 30 years ago, and I'm the only one who remembers, not remembering. Well, on that day, you probably took a visit to Bill Cosby's house and took the wrong drink, and I'm just gonna leave it there. When I was home alone with my sister, who was about 3 at the time, she's sleeping in my room, and I walk out to go to the bathroom. No one else is in the house, but as I'm in there handling business, I start hearing the chairs moving in the kitchen. I come out of the restroom and look to my left where I find the dining table chair moved and placed perfectly staring down the hallway. I go back to check on my sister, and she's still sleeping. I walk around the house to see if my parents were home, and nothing. Doors and windows were shut. No way wind could have pushed the chair 5 feet and turned it to face down the hall. During this time, I was constantly being woken up at 3 a.m. almost every night and felt a cold hand placed on my left pec over my heart. Spooky stuff. Man, see, stories like this one are what really creep me out. I fell asleep watching the original Pet Sematary, dreamt my cat was hit by a car, woke up to my dad telling me she had just been hit, and we needed to take care of her because she was suffering. Aw, poor kitty. But speaking of falling asleep during horror movies, one time I was just sitting in my room in the dark, sitting in my computer like this watching Eraserhead. It was the first time I'd ever watched it, and it's just some like really weird, trippy horror movie. But I think something like 10 or 15 minutes from the end, I fall asleep, and then I wake up like 30 minutes later. But for some reason I was looking at my blank desktop. Like the movie had just closed itself or my computer just restarted or something. Like, I have no idea what happened, but like when I woke up, I just kind of sat there staring at my blank screen for like 10 minutes. I mean, to be honest, that was one of the weirdest, most unnatural things I've ever experienced. But it's kind of made me relate to a couple of these. Like I was saying, like sometimes your brain just isn't working correctly, and you're just in some like different state of mind. It's hard to explain. I was at home with my mom, nobody else. There were only 2 entrances, one at the front where I was sitting nearby, and one at the back of the house, and it directly went to the kitchen where my mom was. And then I heard clearly my dad's voice calling, sounded like from the living room. He was working at the time, but I came to the living room anyway and found my mom there. She asked me, "Did you hear that too?" Nobody was there. When he came home, we asked him, but of course he said it was not him. At first I thought he lied. My dad really loved to prank us, but then there was no way he sneaked silently without me and my mom not knowing it. Man, after so many of these, I'm just going to be running out of explanations for these. When I was 9 years old, my best friend and I were crossing a busy street on the way home from school. Normally we were very careful, but I was distracted by a black cat following us down the road. We stopped, and she bent down to pat him while I turned around to cross the street, not thinking to look both ways. A silver car was directly to my right, about to hit me. I froze up like a deer in the headlights. My friend was screaming. Then suddenly it was on my left. It didn't swerve, wasn't in another lane. The car was just suddenly on my other side, speeding away. I ran across the rest of the road, and my friend asked how I had passed through the car. Everything looked a bit strange. Her shape was fuzzy and doubled. It was a clear day and the sun was shining, even though it had been overcast and windy on the other side of the road. When I glanced back, the black cat was staring at me from the other side. Then he just strolled away. I know it was just an optical illusion, and I had probably just missed the car by a fraction of a second, and was just rattled later. I thought about it for years afterwards, though. Maybe we'll learn one day that black cats aren't necessarily bad luck, they just have some sort of superpowers to control the world around them. I didn't personally witness this, but at the time my family was sufficiently freaked out by it, and it was talked about a lot. One morning my autistic brother went into my parents' room at like 3 a.m. He woke them up to tell them that his grandmother was very old and was going to die. They got a call later that day that she indeed died in her sleep that night. But he's autistic and significantly disabled, so it's not like we could have just asked him how he knew that, or why he said it. He did a lot of other weird psychic stuff over the years, but that was the spookiest one. Man, why do I feel like I'm just reading a bunch of, horror movie plots here? Honestly, they'd make much better movies than most of the horror movies I've seen. I walked from my bedroom down the hallway to the kitchen, stepped through the doorway just as a ball of lightning arced across the room. I blinked and was back in my bedroom without passing the space in between. Crept back up the hall and saw my housemate standing in the kitchen, mouth opening and closing because he had no idea what had happened either. Turns out he'd clamped the power cable for the sandwich press between the hot plates and burnt through it. Thus the lightning. Doesn't explain how I teleported from one end of the house to the other. So if I'm reading this right, it sounds like they just discovered teleportation, but then just brushed it off and never did it again. I had a living room in my parents' 2-story house that connected 2 stairs leading to the second floor of the house. You could see completely down the hall on the second floor from the couch in the living room. One time my family went away on vacation, so I had my cousin come over while I house sat for them. I'd been alone in this house for a couple of days now, and I really just wanted company. We're sitting on this couch playing Xbox or something. The stairs leading to the second floor are almost out of my vision. At the very top of the stairs on the left is a doorway leading to the bathroom and nothing else. We were up pretty late gaming, when out of the corner of my eye I saw a gray face lean out and stare at me for a split second. I didn't budge, I barely noticed it, but as soon as I did, it was gone. I hadn't snapped to look at it, nor did I say anything. I just continued gaming for about 3 seconds until my cousin said, "Did you just see that?" As soon as our eyes connected, we both knew we saw the same thing. The second my cousin said that, I felt my heart sink. It scared the crap out of me to have him pretty much confirm what I saw, but brushed off. I had immediately assumed it was just one of those blurs, or darting shadows you get in the corner of your eyes at times. The creepiest part is that it slid out as if it were lying on the floor. Whatever it was, its head was at level with the top of the steps, right at the bottom of the bathroom door frame. It just sorta slid out, stared, then slid back. Again, I just saw it from the corner of my eyes, but it appeared to be gray skin with black hair from our combined description. We went up the stairs and checked the whole bathroom, including the insides of the luggage bags and closet. We never found anything. Man, why am I recording this so late? It's 11:30 at night right now. I'm also realizing that the longer you go without watching horror movies, the more they will affect you when you come back to them. Because if you're like on a horror movie binge, you're basically just so desensitized to everything, like nothing scares you. But when you go so long without any of that, then you get a little freaked out more easily. I was at my parents' staying over for the weekend, and woke up in the morning with the desire to creep on old classmates on Facebook. There was a girl I kind of liked in band class who was a grade under me, who my brother's friends knew, but I never talked to her. I decided to look her up in addition to others on Facebook, to see what she was like now several years on. We graduated from a large high school in the suburb, and I hadn't thought of her much since I graduated. A few minutes after seeing her page, the phone at my parents' house rings. I lazily walk over to their phone to see if my parents or brothers were phoning. I pick it up and check the caller ID, and in horror I freeze as I read her name on the display. Immediately, I begin to think I've done something in error unbeknownst to me while on her Facebook page, which alerted her to my creeping and has triggered her call. I cannot answer it. I verify the number on the caller ID with Facebook to see it is indeed her and sit in shock, dumbstruck about how this unlikely event occurred and wondering the reason for it. My brother arrived at my parents a little later, and I told him who called. He actually had her number on his cell phone, and he sends her text asking why she called my parents' place. She responds back that she didn't place a call, but that it was just an accidental butt dial. Weird. Man, I had no idea what I was getting into when I started into this thread, but I like where this has been going. When my daughter was about 18 months old, her grandmother passed away. That evening, I put my daughter to bed as normal, but instead of going to sleep pretty quickly as she usually did, she spent over an hour giggling and squealing with laughter. When I went to check on her, she was staring at an empty chair in her room, laughing as if she was watching the funniest thing ever. This carried on every night until the day of her grandmother's funeral. Oh man, why am I reading these right now? I've got to go to bed soon, you know. When I was between 9 and 10 years old, I used to play football with my friends every weekend. One day a guy, probably 18 or 19, joins in out of nowhere. He was wearing a karate suit, and played with us for a while, but he didn't know how to play football, so he just threw karate kicks all around. Random thing, for some reason I never forgot his face. Fast forward 15 years, I'm at college, and I see this karate dude walking around, and I recognize him immediately. A week after I decided to take a trip with my girlfriend to a city 3 hours away from home, we go have a walk around the city, and there's the karate guy again. He was sitting in the grass next to a park kissing with another guy. I thought it was weird, and I told my girlfriend about it. She said it was just my imagination. Next week, I traveled with my family to our annual vacation on the beach, 2 hours by plane from home. I go party with my cousins to a bar. At some point, I go to the door to smoke, and guess who came through the door at the exact same time? Our eyes crossed for 3 seconds. Karate guy didn't recognize me. I was tripping to see him again. Proceeded to call my girlfriend at 3 a.m. to tell her about it. She thought I was becoming insane. I guess coincidences happen. For me, it was just a glitch in the Matrix. I then moved to another continent. If I see the karate guy again, I'm going to crap my pants. I mean, I don't know how you didn't just walk up to him and ask him what he's been up to the last couple weeks. I'm sure he would have found it just as crazy as you. I've never had any psychic energy. I've never seen a ghost. I'm not even particularly intuitive with body language, so imagine my surprise when this happened. I was about 25, I was bartending at nights, and got home about 2:30 a.m. I hated smelling like stale beer, so I took a shower before going to bed. On this night, I sat down on the edge of my bed to take off my shoes. I sat. I did not lay down or recline. I didn't go to sleep or close my eyes. With no warning, I was in another person's mind, or body, or memory. I was walking down a hallway, like a corridor, bad fluorescent lights above, and a cop was walking with me, escorting me. He was wearing a uniform, not a suit and tie. We got toward the end of the hallway and turned right to walk through the double doors. We entered a morgue, and there was a doctor inside the room with a body and a sheet over it. There were other stainless steel tables and lots of medical equipment, but only one body. The lighting was almost putrid, like it had a green or yellow filter on it. No one spoke, but somehow I was aware of the fact that I had to identify the body. The doctor pulled the sheet down and showed a young man between 20 and 25. I was only 25 at the time this happened, but somehow I knew this young man was my son. I started screaming. I mean screaming my freaking head off. I started hitting the cop with my purse. I tried to hit the doctor. I screamed like it was their fault my son was dead. The doctor wrapped his arms around me from behind like a bear hug. And then it was over. The whole thing was less than 90 seconds. When I came back to my own body, I was in the same position, sitting, not laying down, on my bed, and shoes were still on. My heart rate was through the roof. My throat was sore from screaming, but I hadn't made a sound. I have never experienced anything like that before or since. I didn't sleep for 2 days. I don't know who the woman was, the body I was inhabiting. I don't know if I saw her past, her present, or her future, but it felt like I was an interloper, like I was seeing something that wasn't mine to see. If that's what psychic energy is, F it, I don't want it. Okay, can somebody please explain to me why we have all these stories like this, yet Hollywood just keeps releasing the same garbage horror movies over and over again? Maybe I just need to become a movie director or something, because I feel like there's a huge hole in the market for stuff like this. When I was around 15, my parents left me alone for the weekend, Friday night to Sunday later afternoon, and I was thinking, this is awesome. I can chill, play games all weekend, and eat what I want. I went to sleep on Friday night, and then woke up to my mom waking me up to what I thought was the next morning. So I asked, what happened? I thought you were going out the whole weekend. To which she replied, what are you talking about? It's 4 p.m. Sunday. I have no idea what happened to those 2 days. I didn't leave the house. There was no food or washing up that had changed since they left. I hadn't looked at my phone. There were unread messages from Saturday morning, but I refused to believe I was asleep the whole time. Yeah, it's actually kind of a horrible feeling when you sleep through what was supposed to be like a long period of time, especially when you had plans, and it just completely throws off your whole timing, and just everything just feels so off when you wake back up. I mean, the longest I ever had something like this was just like a nap that ended up lasting 8 hours, so I can't even imagine what it's like to fall asleep for a couple days. My husband worked for a small old folks home. They only had 3 residents, and his aunt ran the place. I had a college class nearby and would often come hang out for a few hours at the end of his shift and visit with the residents. One night my husband got the residents to bed and went downstairs to collect his paycheck while I turned off the lights. As I reached the top of the stairs, I turned to look into the hallway leading to the residents' room. Standing outside the room of one of the residents was a woman. She was wearing an old pale green Victorian-style dress and had her ear pressed to the door. I opened my mouth to say something, and she looked directly at me, put her finger on her lips, and shushed me. I turned and practically fell down the stairs. When I got to the owner's office, she took the expression off my face and said, "You saw the woman in green." Not a question. I confirmed, and she asked whose room she was interested in. When I told her, she nodded and sighed. The next morning, the owner called us to let us know that the target resident was found comatose in her bed. She passed away later that day. Man, I'm gonna have fun trying to sleep tonight. Not me, but my parents. In the place where I used to live, there was an old couch. My mom sometimes would walk by in the middle of the night and see a silhouette sitting there. She describes it as a man, sitting down with a hat on, just sitting there. She saw it several times but thought nothing of it. She never told my dad, who one day said to her, "It's weird, but sometimes in the middle of the night I think I see a man sitting down on the couch doing nothing." So yeah, they both saw the same man sitting on this couch, and they told each other after they'd both seen it. Weird. Yeah, I mean, the house might be haunted, but the ghost isn't hurting anything, just leave him. 15 years old, I was taking a shower at home. The rest of my family was out, and it was around 9:30 at night, I believe. Anyway, I hear someone knock on the bathroom door while I'm showering, so I call out, "I'll be out in a sec," thinking it's just my dad or one of my brothers getting home. There was silence for a few moments, and then knocking again. Only this time it was pounding, like someone was nanging on it with their fists, trying to break it down barehanded. It was a little creepy, but my dad always loved to prank us, so I didn't think too much of it. I decided to get a towel around me to see what the heck his problem was anyway, but when I opened the door, no one was there. The house was locked up, no open windows, no cars in the driveway. I checked every floor, every room, no one else was home. That was the first occurrence. The weird happenings continued in smaller ways until we moved out of that house, to the point where we imagined it to be some sort of poltergeist and named them Edgar. Well, that's one way to end this video. You know, I was not really expecting to get put into this whole creepy mood today. You know, it's kind of weird when you're just like so caught up in your daily routine. I mean, you're just constantly busy thinking about stuff, and then something like these just kind of really just throw you off. So it's like, I don't even really know how to feel right now. That was a lot of pretty interesting stories. You know, a lot of people are very skeptical of, you know, paranormal or like ghosts and that kind of thing. And I mean, I understand it's pretty hard to believe anything like that could be happening. For me, I'm just like, I'm open to it. Like, I've heard so many stories like this that it's kind of hard for me to think that they're all made up. I mean, some of them probably are made up. Some of them are probably people just misinterpreting situations. But I have a hard time believing that all of them are made up, you know? I mean, I have to believe that at least some of these really did happen the way they say it did. But maybe we'll never know.